Releasing Trauma is sponsored by the Global Association for Trauma Recovery. The Global Association for Trauma Recovery is a social impact organization serving as a resource for survivors and their families, dedicated to facilitating change by spreading trauma-related awareness and thus creating a more trauma-informed world. Learn more at gaftr.org. Welcome to Releasing Trauma, a Survivor's Podcast. I am your host, Tracey Osborne. I am a survivor of emotional bullying, rape, sexual assault, domestic abuse, and grief. After losing my husband in 2019, I set off on a new adventure to help other women release their trauma and create a life they can cherish. Each week, I will feature a guest expert or a survivor to share their stories, tips, wisdom, and more. The goal is so that you can take away even just the smallest nugget of information you can use in your life right now to make a change, and to remind you that you're not alone. There is life after trauma, and you can move from victim to thriver and create a life you can cherish. Hey everybody, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Tracey Osborne. With me today is Ann Feustel, and we're going to be talking about watching movies as a form of therapy. I am super excited to get into this topic because I have a few of my favorites that are like my comfort movies that I go to. So, Ann, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. I'm very excited to be on your show.
I'm thrilled to have you. And, I forgot to ask you in the green room how to pronounce your last name, so I hope I said it right.
It's Feustel, actually.
Feustel. Okay. My apologies. I usually am really good about asking that. And, this is a great topic, and I'm excited to dive in. But before we do that, why don't you tell us a little bit about your story?
Sure. So I have bipolar disorder and generalized anxiety disorder. And I've been dealing with depression since I was 10. And I discovered several years ago that watching movies has always been a form of therapy for me, a way of dealing with what's going on with me. So I decided to write a book about it. And there's some really fascinating research behind that. So I've always been a writer, since I was 7. So, that's me and that's my story. And I just love to talk about it.
Awesome. So when my husband died a couple of years ago, those first couple weeks of afterwards, when I was just completely lost and didn't know what I was doing, one of the things that I would turn to was TV, just kind of a mind-numbing thing. Well, I couldn't watch any of the shows. In fact, today still, it's been 2 years later, I still can't watch NCIS. That was our show. And I'm like bummed because I really need to catch up on it. But, I turned to some of my comfort shows, my comfort movies. And then I also actually turned to Disney movies. And I don't know what it was about Disney movies, but watching some of my favorite Disney movies really kind of helped me get through those first few weeks.
That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Actually, my favorite movie is a Pixar movie called Inside Out.
I love that movie. I reference it a lot, actually.
Really? That's cool.
That is one of my favorite movies, and that was one that I watched.
Yeah, that's the movie I really focus on the most of any movie in my book is Inside Out. It's so amazing. It's one of those movies that really speaks to mental health. It speaks to emotions and how, I don't like the word normal, but I would say the average person is going to feel, they're going to feel anger, they're going to feel sadness, they're going to feel joy, they're going to feel disgust, and they're going to feel fear, right? And that movie also sort of the secret hero is really sadness.
Yeah, she
And I
is.
really related to her in the movie. I even dressed up as her on Halloween a few years ago.
That's awesome. Listeners, if you haven't seen the movie Inside Out, I don't care if you have kids or not, go watch it. It is such a good movie. And it really depicts the different emotions and how they operate and how they learn to operate together as opposed to just one taking control over the whole thing. So it's a really great movie, and I highly, highly recommend it. And if you have watched it, go watch it again.
Exactly. I've found that, I do a lot of individual and group therapy, and I found several therapists and leaders and those types of folks, professionals over the years, have shown clips of Inside Out. So it's definitely something that therapists and psychologists and various folks in the field have really decided it's an important movie to watch.
Yeah, it really is. So what have you found in your research is, kind of is the link to movies as a form of therapy? I mean, how does that kind of work?
How does it? Oh, okay. So basically, the way it works is basically, for instance, there was a research study done with children who had been abused. And what they did was they showed the movie A Bug's Life to them. And they talked out with the kids sort of the themes of the movie and how it made them feel and that kind of thing.
Mm-hmm.
For one group did that, and the other group, they didn't say anything. So it was talking with the kids, discussing the movie, that kind of thing was what really helped the kids the most. And aggression went down in that group. And they had various positives, and I can't remember off the top of my head what they were, but there was definitely less aggression. So talking it through, journaling about it, that kind of thing, is sort of the ideal. But even just watching the movie, being aware, and really focusing on the movie. So not being on your phone or talking with folks around you, being distracted. The best way to do it is to really focus on the movie. And the other thing is to go towards movies that have positive themes, or at least helpful themes. So, for instance, something like The Color Purple would be helpful, even though there's some abuse and violence in that movie.
Fantastic movie.
Yeah, definitely a fantastic movie. I love that movie. But it's not always easy to watch that movie.
No, that's a tough one.
But a movie like Pulp Fiction is not as helpful.
Yeah, so we want to stick with the upbeat movies to keep us, to kind of help lift our moods.
The upbeat movies, or the helpful dramas kind of thing.
Sure.
And anything, even movies like The Hunger Games, while violent, for me, can be a release because of that love between the main character and her sister in The Hunger Games.
Right.
That is I really can relate to that, and I always cry when Katniss volunteers for her sister in the beginning of the movie. If you haven't seen The Hunger Games, it's good, it's violent, but I always get an emotional release from that movie.
Yeah, that is the whole series is good. It takes her from not just, volunteering for her sister, but because of her and her actions, she kind of changes the whole system,
Exactly.
Or the whole government system and everything gets changed. And so it is a lot more than just watching, people kill each other and whatnot. It's not like super gory or anything, but um, it is a good plot line, a good story. You know, I'm thinking of some of the movies I turn to, like, ones that I've watched for years, like the 1992 version of the Three Musketeers. I can recite the entire movie, and yet I still can't get enough of it.
Oh man, I haven't seen that one in a long time.
When I'm in a a depressed state, or something like that, that movie just always picks me up. I just love that movie. Or I'll watch others like 2 Weeks Notice, or You've Got Mail, or so I've got my go-to movies that kind of I don't have to concentrate so much, and I can just kind of sit back, relax, and almost like a meditation. I don't have to think. I don't have to do. I know what's going to happen in the next scene, so I don't have to be prepared for it. And that really actually kind of helps to calm me down when I'm anxious or feeling depressed, or something like that.
No, I totally agree with you. That is exactly how I feel about it. It was the first movie I realized that I could have that experience that you're talking about with The Princess Bride. I was in college, and I was in the midst of a manic episode, and there was some psychosis in there as well. It was a bad episode. And I wasn't sleeping, and so I decided to put The Princess Bride on. And I was there in the movie. I didn't have to think about it. I could just be there, and my mania, my symptoms were just gone. I was just there in the movie. So it was pretty special.
Yeah, it's really, I have found those are a great way to, just kind of clear your mind of everything. And we all have those movies that we love to watch over and over again, no matter how many times we've seen them. I probably have 20 of them, that I can recite. I've turned my kids onto them. My older two, they love the same movies. They can recite them, so it's also something that I can connect with my kids about, because I can just say a line from a movie, or, just randomly, and they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Or, I use movie lines as comebacks, or, something like that. And they know exactly what I'm talking about. So it's a great way that I can relate to my kids too.
Yeah, no, totally. And, I title my book Our Favorite Movies, because 10 of the 12 that I focus on are all ones my sister and I grew up watching together.
Yeah.
And we definitely love to quote, especially When Harry Met Sally.
We won't quote that scene. That was a good movie too. But I think movies can definitely be, not just like a meditative or therapy, but you can bond over them. I remember, back when I first graduated high school, Sister Act came out. And I had been in the choir. My best friend had been in the choir, and I mean, we sang those songs constantly. She'd be like, "Okay, you take the low part, I'll take the high part," or and we would just reenact those songs, and it was just a fun bonding experience that we still talk about here 30 years later.
That's awesome.
So, I think there's definitely a positive side to watching movies. And I know a lot of people think that, it's a waste of time to watch TV or watch movies and stuff like that. And, if that's your preference, that's fine. But I think it has its time and its place.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And I think, I get a little bit of, my dander gets up a little bit when I hear people sort of brag about not watching TV or movies, or, like you said, saying it's a waste of time, because it's so important to me to have those comfort TV shows and movies.
Yeah.
Shows for me like Charmed is probably my number one comfort show.
I mean, we all have our preferences and we all have what works for us. And there are people out there that TV and movies just doesn't work for them. And that's okay. That's okay for them. As long as, they're not trying to put those of us who do watch movies and stuff down or, make it a negative thing. We all have our preferences. Just like, some people might be listening out there going, oh my God, one of your favorite movies is You Got Mail. That was the lamest movie ever. And that's great. That's your opinion. I freaking love that movie. And I think a lot of it is because my computer online experience started with AOL, So you hear the modem in the computer dial up and all that. And I'm just like, oh, memories, so, there's, yeah, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, now, if you like Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan pairing, another movie I've talked about in the book is Joe versus the Volcano. Have you seen that one?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was funny. Yeah, that was a good one. I mean, that one was actually it was one of those that was kind of lame, kind of stupid, but it was still funny. But it was a good movie.
Oh, I love that movie.
Yeah. I love Meg and Tom together. They do great together. They do great work.
Definitely.
So
much.
There's also, we're talking about upbeat movies and stuff, but there's also movies that make us cry. And crying can be very, very therapeutic. Exactly. I'm thinking of what is it? City of Angels, Nick Cage and Meg Ryan.
Yes, that's a good one. That's definitely a great crier movie.
Yeah, and you just, it's like, okay, I really need to just have a good cry and, just release. And that's a great way to do it. It's just watch a sad movie and bawl it out and then you're fine. So I'm excited about this topic because it's, it's just fun. It's a great alternative, or not necessarily alternative therapy, but another tool for your toolbox, for your therapy healing toolbox.
Well, there are people who are cinema therapists out there, who actually are therapists who prescribe movies to people.
Really?
Yeah. I don't have one, but maybe someday. But one of the things that they'll prescribe, like Gary Solomon, Bridget Waltz, various other folks who work in that field, are movies that will make you cry. Yeah. Because sometimes, for whatever reason, you can't cry and you want to. And sometimes the best way to cry is to put on a movie that you've cried at before, or that you think you'll cry at. Like Little Women for me is the one that I will always cry.
For me, well, I don't cry for it. I don't cry in it anymore. The Green Mile, which is a really weird movie to cry in. Number one, when John Coffey died, that was, that was super sad. But when they executed the French guy, and he didn't wet the sponge, and I mean, it was a horrible scene. I'm not going to describe it. The first time I watched that, you would have thought I was watching one of my family members get executed. I was in hysterics when I watched that. And you just feel so much better after a good cry. Most of the time.
Most of the time, yeah.
Minus the snotty nose and swollen eyes. Well, Anne, this has been fun. Thank you so much for coming on the show and talking with us today. This has been awesome.
Oh, it's been great. I could keep talking to you forever. So
I could totally talk movies for a long time, but our listeners are probably going, okay. But it's fun. It's a whole different, type of conversation than what we normally have on this show. So it's awesome. I'm having a blast with it. How can our listeners find you?
Sure. Well, you can find the book our favorite movies, How Films Affect Our Mental Health on Amazon. And you can find me at my website, wearewritingwisely.com.
Fantastic. And listeners, you know the drill. I'll put all her contact information, everything in the show notes. Just head over to releasingtraumapodcast.com, pull up Anne's show and all her contact information, and the link to the book will be there. So thank you again, Anne, for joining us. And listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. We'll talk to you in the next show.